Hey everybody, it's Donovan with the Music Retail Podcast. I want to thank you for being here today and for watching today's episode. I think you're going to really enjoy it. You know, my goal with the Music Retail Podcast is to interview people that are interesting, that have something to give and to share, that can help you build a better business. In order to make sure you receive future updates, please like and subscribe. That not only will keep you in the loop for things as they come up, but it also helps the YouTube algorithm to know that people actually like this content and will share it around. Okay, let's get to the interview.
Well, today on the Music Retail Podcast, we've got a special guest, Jim Hirschberg from MI Sales Trak. I first heard of MI Sales Trak probably a little over 10 years ago, and I'm pretty sure I read about it in one of the trade magazines and was really fascinated about it. Today, we're going to talk with Jim and learn a little bit about what MI Sales Trak offers. This is data that you have likely seen, although you may not have realized where you were seeing it from, how it would benefit you to participate in the program, and how we use it, how they collect it, and that kind of stuff. So, Jim, welcome to the Music Retail Podcast.
Good morning, Donovan. Good to be with you.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about the background of MI Sales Trak and how this whole thing got started and what it is that you guys do.
Well, we started in 2002, myself and a partner, and we brought a unique background that we had both worked in market research, specifically retail sales tracking. And I ran a service at the NPD Group, a top 10 research company that worked in consumer electronics. And working with the CE vendors, the question kept coming up, what about pro products? Can we get data on the pro side? And the company that we worked for found this musical products industry too small, too strange, too different from everything else they did. So we broke off on our own and brought the research methodology, which we know, and our love for gear. We're both amateur guitar players and semi-collectors. So we brought that unique combination of the research background and the knowledge of musical gear together to bring to the MI industry retail sales tracking in a fashion that exists in most industries and most other geographies around the world.
Gotcha. So, and you guys are tracking retail sales for MI products and then kind of reporting that as a conglomerate. So you're not tracking and reporting individual store numbers. It's kind of being all put together so we can see what the trends are across the country for MI retail sales, correct?
Exactly. Let me share a slide with you that details the methodology.
Sure. Anyone who's, while he's doing that, anyone who's listening to the podcast, there is also a Music Retail Podcast YouTube channel. And so you can jump over to YouTube if you'd like to be able to see these slides. But
okay, so we have the slide on the methodology.
Yep.
And the way the program works is we collect actual point of sale transactional data from a panel of about 80 plus retailers, including 50 of the top 200. They report every month at the item level, sales and inventory. Okay, from that, we produce our monthly reports. Of course, we keep each individual retailer's input strictly confidential. I should mention the program is free of charge. Doesn't cost you anything to participate, just a little bit of time to run the numbers out each month.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we don't provide the reports to retailers unless they put their numbers in. So this benefits those who participate in the program. And we make our living by selling the reports, selling the data to the manufacturer community. They use it in product planning, production planning, functions which also help them to serve the retailer better. By participating, in effect, you're telling your vendors, this is the kind of product that works for us. So it helps them to plan what prices to hit, what features to include in products, and also how much to make and when to have it available hopefully to avoid back order situations or overstock situations. And
Right.
in the end, the total industry benefits from a better understanding of what consumers are buying and the market trends behind them.
Yeah. This is so helpful because, if a manufacturer is not participating in this program, or if they're not seeing it, if retailers aren't participating in it, then manufacturers will only see what they're selling into stores. And it's so important for them to see what the stores are actually selling. And so being able to have this info in a way that's easy to share and anonymous is really, really helpful, I think.
Right. And this goes to the product planners who rely on it as one of their inputs. I used to be a manufacturer's rep in a former life, and dealers would say, Jim, the product should have had this or that on it. It should have been priced differently. And that sort of input only goes so far. It's difficult to put that together and get a total picture. And that's one function that the numbers provide. So on the retailer side, typically the information is used to identify opportunities. It supports your buying and merchandising and helps to benchmark performance. If you're up or down in a given month, how does that relate to the rest of the industry, to other dealers like you? Sometimes you look at a bestseller in our data. We don't tell anybody what to do based on the numbers. If there's a top selling item in one of the product categories, if you carry it, that's good information to have. You might want to use it on the sales floor. Let the customer know that an independent research company ranks this the top selling product. It's not just the floor salesperson saying so.
Right.
And then if you don't carry that particular item, we don't say you have to. You might want to look at it, and based upon who you are, where you are, who your customers are, and all those things that make each dealer different, you might decide that's for you or take a pass on it. But the information alerts you to what consumers are buying out there.
Sure. I know for us, this is, it's funny when you and I connected this morning, you'd asked how I use it. We use it just based on your slide right here. We get the data. And the first thing that we use is for the benchmark. I mean, I think that's the thing we're most curious about is how is our performance compared to what's going on in the rest of the country? And are we outperforming or underperforming in certain categories? And we don't represent all the categories that you report. You report on Pro Sound and all kinds of stuff. And we don't really do much with that at this point. And but we've also used it
to jump in and say these are the categories.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
The combo and pro audio categories. Combo is a word that's still in play. I feel like we're back in the 60s when we speak of combo, but guitars, amps, effects, keys, and then on
recording
the
products.
Pro audio side, live sound, recording, DJ products, 20 categories in total. So you're receiving from us 20 PDF reports, each of them running 10 to 20 pages in length and covering these categories in terms of the trend in unit sales and dollar sales, the top 10 brands with their market shares, and the top 10 items of each type within category. Say in guitars, that would be the top selling electric, acoustic guitars, top selling bass guitars, and similarly in the other categories.
Yeah. So it goes everything from guitars all the way through recording equipment and interfaces. And a retailer, if they want to participate in this, they don't have to sell all these categories, right? They could just be a guitar and amp shop and participate in the program. Is that correct?
Sure, you should be involved in these categories. And the only other requirement really is to have a good POS system such that you can report accurately. And we can work with most of the popular POS systems. as long as you're able to report monthly sales in units, dollars, and how many are left in stock. We don't often talk about the inventory, but that's one of the key measures too, in terms of the supply, how many months of supply are in the market, is a product selling through quickly or is it sitting? Maybe it's in a back order position. So the inventory is helpful in understanding the overall picture.
Yeah. And so as a retailer, we submit our data, and then every month we get these reports from you. And we tend to, of course, just look at the reports that we're interested in, since we don't do a lot with live sound and those, and we're not really committed to those categories. We don't look at those very much, but we look quite a bit at the guitar, amplifier, effects. Really interesting to see kind of what's moving out there in the marketplace, see if there's something that we're missing. You guys aren't tracking sales for band and orchestra, and you don't track sales for sheet music. So
right,
it's just the
our
instruments themselves.
apologies to the school music community. We're not in band and orchestra products, although I did get my own start in music playing the drums in school band and orchestra.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's a different sales cycle that would be harder to measure and perhaps less effective. I think it would be interesting to see it, but because of the whole rental program and when students tend to buy, that sales cycle is regular in its irregularity. It's not regular in terms of monthly, but it's predictable in terms of season. So may not be quite as useful for an MI Sales Trak.
We do think we hope that things will pick up in school and school music programs. I know it's been tough in the pandemic months.
Sure. Yeah.
Speaking of which, I'd like to show you a presentation chart. This is not a standard report, but a kind of summary of last year in the pandemic.
Yeah.
And what's selling and what's not. And this is what it looks like. What we did is put on the left side what we'll call play at home or home studio type products.
Mm-hmm.
And on the right, the live event categories. And last year started out normal the first 2 months. When the pandemic broke in March, pretty much everything shut down. But at the same time, we started to see consumer data that indicated that people who were stuck at home were spending money on hobbies. And we thought that might be good for some musical products. And it turned out to be a real surge for guitars in particular. Guitar business was up 15% last year. Some months were up 50%, but in total, that's where it came in. Keys did very well, especially digital pianos, very popular for home use while locked down at home. Groove production or beat production, if you prefer, basically music making in a box, another popular at home activity. And then we get into the home studio categories, studio monitors, audio interfaces. Interfaces actually had the biggest percentage gain. So you see that big bar there, but guitars were worth more in dollar value. And,
right.
The home studio growth was really on two fronts. One was part of the making music at home and recording at home. And the other driver was Zoom meetings, podcasting, streaming, anything that involved USB mics, audio interfaces was selling like crazy. So on that note, the microphone industry had a foot in both worlds. Wired mics, particularly broadcast mics, USB microphones, surged. On the other hand, anything for home, for live use, and that is primarily wireless microphones, nosedived, as did sound reinforcement. Obviously, the lack of live events, if there are no concerts, weddings, parties, all the things that would use live sound or DJ, they're still on hold, and that part of the
Yeah.
industry is severely depressed. We put these together. We found the business down about 1.8% last year. So that balances the big strength in the at-home categories that were surging against the declines in the live categories that suffered as a result of the pandemic.
Right. Well, you say it balances, but not, but probably not. I mean, in my experience, we look at guitars up 15%, monitors up 27%, interfaces up 51%, whereas sound reinforcement's down 42%, wireless mics down 41.6%. In our business, we are really focused on guitars, guitar-related accessories, and then band rentals, lessons, and repairs. And we don't focus so much on anything with live sound. And we actually don't even focus that much on recording. So we benefited primarily from the uptick, and weren't adversely affected by the live sound problem. And I feel like the industry has taken kind of a split. There are certainly some stores that are still doing a lot of both, but there's a lot of stores that are kind of like, all right, we're a guitar shop, or we do a lot of installations. And I think it was probably a bit of feast or famine for a lot of people in the industry.
Yeah, it depends on your mix. As you say, guitar stores have been rocking. If you're more focused on live sound, it's been extremely difficult. And hopefully, the full line stores that have a mix across these categories, the weakness in some areas can be compensated with the gains in others.
Yeah.
School music, of course, is the other piece that's been difficult in the pandemic.
Yeah. The thing that's interesting is I recently did an interview with Whitney Brown Grisafi, who I think her episode may air before this one does, but she had commented on how their installation business has still continued strong. So because construction has still been going this entire time, basically, at least in her area in the Northwest. And so they've been still heavily involved with installation business and things like that. So I think that side of the business there's still business to be had out there, but any live sound that goes for sound support, PA support for big events, yeah, that certainly kind of kicked the bucket last year.
Yeah. And we've noticed the same thing with regard to the install market. I believe that projects that were spec'd and budgeted in advance have gone through. And, that's in terms of the portion of the install business that we track. We're really not involved in the conference rooms or commercial sound, that sort of thing.
Right. Gotcha. Any other slides or data that you want to share?
Well, we're not going to share the actual reports because, as stated, those are only for our participants. But I will put up some contact information if any of your viewers are interested in more information or would like to see a sample report or discuss what it takes to be involved in the program. You could visit our website, MISalestrak.com, or drop an email to info@MISalestrak.com, and we'll be happy to cover that.
Yeah, it's MI Sales Trak, but without the C.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about how we use it. If you don't mind, turn off your screen sharing so that I've got your face back covering most of my screen. There we go.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah. So, for us, for Springfield Music, it's very easy to submit the data. We use AIM by Tri-Technical Systems. And so running the reports literally takes a couple of minutes a month. And I think now we could even set it up in their latest version to even automate it. So someday we'll probably get that set up. And then we email that in to you all. And then after you process it, then that following month, you send us a list of reports. Actually, usually after we email to you, within a week or so, we're getting the reports from the previous month. And then we are going through that. And like I mentioned earlier, we're looking at both benchmarks and we're looking for brands, but I wanted to talk a little bit specifically about the thing that we noticed that was interesting for brands, especially for products. We have found that we can't just go off of maybe what is selling really well everywhere to have it automatically be a good purchasing decision for us. I remember when we first joined the program years ago, we were looking for a new acoustic line, and we, looking through the reports, picked one of the number at the time, what was the number one selling acoustic line in the country. And we're like, oh, this is the best selling acoustic line. Like, we should pick it up. And so we picked it up and added to our inventory. We didn't really give any thought to, how does it complement our existing offerings. And what we found was it was very, very similar to what we already had. And therefore, and of course, our salespeople already knew the products we already had. And they didn't see any reason to learn the new products. And so for us, that product didn't fare as well. And not because it was a bad product or anything like that, but just because it was too similar. So I would want to encourage anyone who looks at it to not just make kind of the rookie mistake we make, which is just assume well, this is the number one selling product in the country, I have to have it. Maybe not. You have to use a little discretion, I think, to decide if that's something that you need or not. But it certainly is very handy, and we can all find our niches and pockets of things that aren't a top 10 nationwide selling product, but does really well for us, maybe because you or your salespeople really believe in it. But nevertheless, to have the data is really helpful. And the benchmarking data is so useful just to get a sense of how are you doing against the trend? How are you doing against the marketplace? Are you outperforming other retailers? Are you underperforming? And I think that's just been so useful. And then the other part of me that likes to give back, which is, one of the reasons I do this podcast, I like help, if my data can help other people, if I can help my manufacturers make better decisions on their end, I want to do that. I want to do that to be a good partner, to help them. And I also want to do that because I recognize that by helping them, it helps me in the long run as well, too. So is there any kind of restriction for, you mentioned that for a dealer, it has to have it has to be someone with a point of sale system that is capable of exporting the data that you need. Is there a certain size, like a sales volume amount for a dealer that you want, or will you take anyone? What are your criteria for someone
we
being a
hate
member?
to set a minimum in terms of sales volume. We are supporters of independent retailers. We know everybody is not, a huge retailer, and we like to work with those that are involved in the categories, be it a guitar shop or more of a keyboard store, a pro audio specialist. Overall size, we don't have any minimums, but we like to work with dealers that are active in the product categories. Where it gets tough for us is somebody who wants to open a store, but it's hard to participate in a data exchange program before you have data to exchange.
Right. That's right. It's really important, I think, for anyone listening. You don't have to be a top 200 retailer to participate in this. You can be a local music store. You can be, a local guitar shop and participate in the program. As long as you have an easy way to export and send the data, you can participate.
And by the way, our focus really is on independent specialists. Amazon famously doesn't share data. They're a black box, as is the biggest chain in the business, which was actually a charter member of the program and a great partner for about 15 years until they apparently decided to follow the Amazon example and not tell anybody anything. But to some of your comments, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, because you mentioned the use of the information, and we're on the same page there. We don't tell anybody what they should carry. You have to make that decision based upon all the factors, who you are and where you are, who your competitors are.
Yeah.
If somebody across the street carries a product line, maybe you don't want to go head to head with them on that. Maybe you want to pick a different spot. By the way, there's also a price point report that breaks out brands by price range. So if you're looking to fill a gap at the higher end or the lower end or in between, you can pick your spots that way as well. And also to echo what you said, it is a service to the industry. It helps the industry as a whole to have this kind of information.
Yeah. It helps all of us make better decisions with how we allocate our funds, for sure. Well, this has been really cool. Anything else that you want to share today?
Well, a lot of folks have been asking us to predict what's going to happen in the future.
I was going to close with that.
We don't do that, and I've been very glad that we don't, because nobody would have predicted what happened in 2020. Before the pandemic, my favorite example of why we don't forecast, I was watching a ball game one night, and there was a rain delay. And the broadcasters in the booth mentioned that the pregame forecast had been 0% chance of rain as they're sitting there during the rain delay. So we don't forecast, but we can look at the current trends. And right now we're crunching the numbers for January, and it looks like the guitar boom is continuing. Keys are looking good. And live sound, those live events are not coming back, and those categories are still on hold. And we think those trends are going to be into the next few months anyway. Some are concerned that the guitar boom might be a bit of a bubble. And it's true when you start getting giddy about how good things are and how much growth. It doesn't necessarily continue forever, but we think it's very deep and strong and ongoing.
Yeah.
So, we have for the next 6 months at least, think we'll see a continuation of some of the trends on the positive side. And we're hopeful that as venues start to reopen and concerts start to ramp up again, that we'll see improvement in the areas that have been impacted there.
I certainly think we're going to see people get back to wanting experiences. And I think an experience that we're all missing right now is, getting out and listening to live concerts, performances, and live music and those kinds of things. So I tend to agree with you. In terms of forecasting, I completely understand why you all don't want to take an official position of making forecasting predictions. But for anyone listening, it is an important part, I think, of a retailer's business plan is to make forecasts. And just like weather forecasts, I think I read something the other day that weather forecasts are accurate up to 85% of the time. And I mean, that's pretty good. No one predicted a global pandemic in 2020. Well, I shouldn't say no one. Most didn't have that on their radar. But most times having a forecast of where you think you're headed, if you've got the right data and enough experience, it's definitely going to help you make sure that you're headed in the direction you want and alert you to any potential issues. We've done our forecasting for this year. Very difficult, of course, to try to think, what you're going to do profit-wise and dollar and expense-wise for an entire year, starting from the beginning. But it's alerted us to some areas that we need to be mindful of. Our decrease in rentals from the last school year is going to really affect our revenue hard this year. So it's made us look at some other opportunities that we can look at to try to replace that revenue. So I think anyone listening, forecasting is important, but I completely understand why the company who focuses on sales history doesn't want to use that to try to
exactly
forecast what they think is happening.
Have
a manufacturer get really ticked off at you.
Look at the external trends in the market. Look at how your own business is going, and then you get to the dicey part of making those assumptions and trying to predict, how you're going to be planning for your year.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Jim, this has been an interesting conversation, and I really hope people will reach out and participate in it. Just the more of us that participate, the better and better the data gets. They can go to misalestrak.com. That's track without a C, or they can email you at info@misalestrak.com and learn more about it and how they can participate.
Well, thanks so much, Donovan. We appreciate your participation in the program for the past 10 years or so. And it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Likewise. Thanks.